The late morning air at Clarence House carries a crisp edge, the kind that bites at the skin despite the sun's faint attempts to break through a thick layer of gray clouds. Royal Guard Edward, 35, stands at his post near the main entrance, a towering figure at 6 feet 2, his scarlet tunic a vivid contrast against the pale stone facade of the royal residence. His black bearskin hat sits proudly atop his head, its polished fur catching the occasional glint of light, and his hazel eyes scan the courtyard with the precision of a hawk. Edward has stood through worse: blistering heat, torrential rain, even the occasional heckler, but today the air feels charged, like the prelude to a storm that has nothing to do with the weather. A diplomatic delegation is arriving, a high-profile visit from a foreign ambassador, and the tension in the air is palpable, a silent warning that something is about to go wrong. The motorcade rolls in with a low hum, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows at its center, flanked by 2 security SUVs. The ambassador emerges first, a wiry man in his 50s, his gray suit impeccably tailored, a green emerald pin glinting on his lapel, a symbol of his country's heritage. He's flanked by his security detail, 3 men in dark suits, but one stands out: Viktor, a broad-shouldered brute in his early 40s, his shaved head gleaming under the overcast sky, his cold blue eyes scanning the surroundings with a predator's intensity. Edward notices him immediately. The way Viktor's movements are too sharp, too deliberate, his posture radiating arrogance. The delegation is ushered toward the entrance, but Viktor lingers, his gaze locking onto Edward with a smirk that sends a jolt of unease down the Royal Guard's spine. Edward's training kicks in. Stay still, stay focused, don't react. But the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end, a primal warning he can't ignore. The provocation comes swiftly, a calculated move disguised as carelessness. As Viktor passes Edward's post, he veers just close enough to deliver a deliberate shoulder check, his bulk slamming into Edward's side with enough force to make the Royal Guard stagger a step. The impact sends a dull ache through Edward's shoulder, his black boots slipping slightly on the polished cobblestones, but he catches himself, his posture snapping back to rigid attention. His hazel eyes blaze with controlled fury, the muscle in his jaw ticking as he forces himself to remain silent. Viktor turns, that smirk widening into a taunt, his voice low and mocking as he mutters in a thick accent, "Watch where you're standing, toy soldier." The insult lands like a spark on dry tinder, igniting a fire in Edward's chest, but he knows the stakes. Any reaction could spark an international incident, a diplomatic crisis that would echo far beyond these walls. Yet Viktor isn't done. He steps closer, invading Edward's space, his breath hot and reeking of tobacco as he adds, "Or do you just stand there looking pretty?" The courtyard seems to shrink, the air thickening with tension as the other security guards pause, their hands hovering near their holsters, sensing the shift. The ambassador, now near the entrance, turns back, his face tightening with unease, while the Clarence House staff, a butler and 2 aides in crisp uniforms, freeze, their eyes darting between the 2 men. Edward's training screams at him to hold his ground, but Viktor's provocation is a direct challenge to his honor, his duty, his very purpose as a royal guard. He can't let it stand. With a swift motion, Edward's gloved hand shoots out, grabbing Viktor's wrist as the security guard reaches for his radio, twisting it just enough to make the larger man wince. "Step back," Edward says, his voice a low growl, steady but laced with steel, his hazel eyes boring into Viktor's with an intensity that could cut glass. For a moment, the 2 men are locked in a silent battle of wills, the world around them fading as the confrontation teeters on the edge of violence. Viktor doesn't step back. Instead, he yanks his wrist free with a snarl, his free hand swinging in a wild punch aimed at Edward's jaw. The Royal Guard reacts on instinct, ducking just in time, the fist grazing his bearskin hat and sending it askew. Edward counters with a precise jab, his gloved fist connecting with Viktor's cheek, the impact sending a dull thud echoing across the courtyard. Viktor staggers back, a red mark blooming on his face, his blue eyes flashing with rage as he lunges again, this time tackling Edward against the stone wall of Clarence House. The collision jars Edward's spine, a sharp pain shooting through his back, but he drives his knee into Viktor's stomach, forcing the security guard to double over with a grunt. Cobblestones, slick with morning dew, make every move treacherous, Edward's boots slipping as he struggles to maintain his footing, his scarlet tunic creased and smudged with dirt from the scuffle. The ambassador shouts in his native tongue, a sharp command that cuts through the chaos, his face pale as he rushes forward, flanked by the other security guards who finally draw their weapons, though they hesitate to intervene. The Clarence House staff scramble, one aide shouting for backup while the butler ushers the dignitaries toward the entrance, their faces a mix of shock and fear. Edward and Viktor are a whirlwind of motion, fists flying, grunts of exertion filling the air as they grapple for dominance. Edward's training gives him the edge. Every move is calculated, every strike precise, but Viktor's raw strength is a force of its own, his sheer bulk threatening to overpower the royal guard. A particularly hard shove sends Edward crashing to the ground, his elbow scraping against the cobblestones, a fresh graze stinging as blood wells up beneath his torn sleeve. But Edward rolls to his feet, his chest heaving, his bearskin hat now lying in the dirt, a symbol of his duty momentarily fallen. The standoff reaches its peak as Edward rises, his hazel eyes locking onto Viktor's, both men breathing heavily, their fists still raised, the air crackling with unresolved tension. Viktor wipes a trickle of blood from his lip, his scowl deepening, but the ambassador's voice rings out again, this time in English. "Enough! Stand down!" The security guards finally step in, pulling Viktor back, though he resists, his gaze never leaving Edward. The royal guard straightens, his posture rigid despite the pain in his back and the blood on his elbow, his scarlet tunic now marred with dirt and sweat. He retrieves his bearskin hat, brushing it off with a trembling hand before placing it back on his head, his duty as a royal guard unbroken even in the face of chaos. The ambassador, visibly shaken, exchanges terse words with his team, while the Clarence House staff murmur among themselves, their whispers carrying a mix of admiration and disbelief. "He held his ground," the butler mutters to an aide, his voice low but filled with respect. Edward stands tall, his hazel eyes still burning, a silent guardian who faced provocation with courage, his honor intact amidst the storm of conflict that nearly tore the courtyard apart.